No one enjoys criticism. I shouldn't say no one, but most people don't enjoy criticism. However, it is a mitzvah to criticize people who are behaving in a fashion which is against the Torah. How one does that, and one does that sensitively, is the subject of this mitzvah. Let's take a look inside. Mitzvah number 72. I apologize. It is a positive commandment to upbraid a sinner. As Scripture says, you shall surely rebuke your fellow. He is to inform him, the sinner, that he does himself wrong by his evil acts. And he is to inform him that he is telling him only for his own benefit, to bring him to life in the world to come. It is his duty to reprimand him until he listens to him, or until he strikes him and says, I will not listen to you, at which point you can stop. There are some early authorities who are lenient about this, holding that it is enough until there is an angry retort by the recipient of this message that the others give us in rejecting our efforts. But even the first view applies specifically when the person violates a prohibition by Torah law, and when he estimates that it will be effective for the future, the criticism will matter, and that the other person will not do this thing again, that it'll be effective. Even a person of lower stature is duty-bound to rebuke a person of higher stature. Whoever has it in his power to oppose a sinner in his act and does not do so falls victim to the guilt of his sin. Now, even though it is a religious duty to rebuke him, a sinner, he should not shame him first. It is a religious requirement to accept rebuke and to bear the chastiser affection. We find in the teaching of the sages that even if a person willfully violates a prohibition enacted by the sages, it is permissible to call him a transgressor. This applies everywhere at every time for both man and woman. This turns out to be a very, very complicated subject about which books have been written as to when it is applicable to rebuke someone for violating a Torah commandment, and how do we determine whether or not that rebuke will be effective. What's certainly clear is that you have to do it in a way which isn't going to shame the other person and is going to be acceptable to the other person. And that once the other person says, bug off, or I'm not listening to you, you should stop. We generally have a rule, mutiv shu shogegin, it's better that they should sin unintentionally than intentionally. We don't have to keep reminding the person they're doing the wrong thing. Once we've established with them that they're doing the wrong thing, don't keep reminding them, because then every time that they do it, they're doing it very conscious and aware, and it's actually more culpable of an action. All right, what's very, very clear here is that you have to do it in the right way. There's no shaming. There's no hassling. You're not going to, once the person says, I hear you, thank you, goodbye, then it's goodbye. And certainly, this should not be done in public in a way which embarrasses anyone. Also, it's pretty clear that this applies to Torah commandments primarily, and that rabbinic commandments certainly have less of an obligation, if an obligation at all. The bottom line is we got to help the other guy out. If the other guy is missing the mark, we want to tell them they're missing the mark. But if and only if they're going to be receptive. If they're not going to be receptive, or if you're telling them so is only going to cause them to do something that previously they thought, it wasn't such a bad thing, and now they realize fully the extent of it, you better not to tell them. We live in a society, we live in a time where rebuking other people is considered generally past our bounds. You should know that in traditional society this was never the case, and that people rebuked other people all the time, and you accepted that rebuke, and you did a little introspection, and you ate some humble pie, and you moved on. Nowadays, it's like, it's not your business, get out of my face, let me do whatever I want. Listen, personal freedom is wonderful, but from time to time, we still need to remind other people, hey, you've gone off track. And at the very least, it's a type of thing that we should do for anyone we care about. And it's a Torah commandment. Okay, next time, Mitzvah Positive Commandment 73, to render judgment about inheritances of landed property. To be continued. Bye.